I have an idea, and it involves but one torso and one face. TORSOFACE! He's back. Welcome, chromatic warriors. In the previous video I bashed up some mechs, and I could not resist applying a little color to at least one of them. I thought if that previous video excited you, that you might be wanting to look at certain techniques to bring your mech to life. So we're going to zoom in on TORSOFACE and bring him to full life. Color. Full color is much better for the word economy of the intro. Let's paint. He's got legs, and they're made for stomping. The mechs give you an interesting choice. They have a lot of smaller panel lines and details, but I think painting over the canvas is the way to go. So let's get weird with it. Spray up those red legs. I'll just be using pure red from the Warpaints Air line, mixed with a little bit of black. That'll be my first coat. Then adding a little bit more pure red into that mixture to lighten things up. Immediately getting into the advanced stuff. Mask it off with poster putty. I've tried liquid masks, masking tape. Still come back to the sticky tack putty. Moving on, I wanted to conjure up a gross yellow. Normally I'd go with an orange-brown, like Molten orange for example, but this is fun. Mix yellow and black, which gives me a greenish tone. It's almost like dark licorice, dark black licorice, the best kind of licorice. But just something interesting to note, what you base your yellow off of, be it black or perhaps molten orange. It's still yellow, but has a different shadow. Once that was dry, imp yellow was added. I kept the airbrush a little closer for finer highlights. And now for the big reveal. It's so satisfying pulling off that mask. I did it a little too aggressively, and I don't know. I got excited. Sometimes models break, but for those moments, you have super glue. Real quick, base the metals with gunmetal in some silver areas and death metal to produce a brassy effect in other areas. You're just trying to break everything up and go for a little bit of variation. It's a very large model, so coloring everything in the same metallic color, it doesn't look small enough. So a little bit of variation in the materials used. One more area to cover. Base coat the fins and the face with Great Hall Gray. And then move up to pale sand to lay down some highlights. Time for some furious edging. You are Tony Hawk. Your brush is your skateboard. The bristles, the trucks. Ride them upon the sharpened edges of the battle mech. Ran out of words there. But anyways, edge highlighting using Dragon Red for the legs and Barren Dune for the torso. There are many panels of infinite design, and I want to do a thorough and saturated job. One pass will not do in all of these cases. I really want to bring out these edges again, maximizing the look of the size of the thing. This is a fun little trick, taking a shred of foam. This is from an old miniature carrying case. You could use a piece of sponge. Just look around. There are things all around you to create textures with, but taking this little shred of sponge, dipping it into some black with a little bit of water involved, wiping it off on the paper towel, and then gently pressing it around the model to create battle damage and just ruinous interruptions. It's a good thing. The sharpening. Bring out your dark lines. If you've seen my previous video on how to dark line, you'll know what's up. If you haven't, check that video out. But I'll be dropping into the seams with a little bit of black and red mixed together, and then of course yellow and black in the appropriate areas. You can see the sharpness that this adds to the situation. It is essential for breaking up all those fine panel lines, and yep, making sure this looks big even though it's small. Oh baby, it's all effects. Time for a little bit of that anti-zenithal. Spraying up from the bottom with a mixture of black and magnolia brown. Well, that took me down to Tone Town, and that's a fun place to be. You can see the effect that it's having. Just lovely. It's so satisfying to watch this filter over all of the edge highlights, creating gradients there. Really loving the airbrush combined with this spraying of shadows from the depths. Okay, you can put the airbrush away for a little while. We're done spraying. We have but one more step to use it for, but let's do some brush work. I can now focus on the base. First, laying down a hefty foundation of Tree Ancient. I blended Molten Lava to pull out the broader surfaces, pulling black over the ridges of rocks for a little bit of variation on the ground. I even threw down some Greenskin on the small kind of domed area and then stippled some Arctic Gem into that to highlight. A small amount of Daemonic Yellow was brought in as well. I didn't think that just the orange and the brown was quite bright enough, so just lifted up a little bit further, but in a smaller portion with some Daemonic Yellow. Then you can dry brush all over that with some pale sand. Very nice. Now let's get back to some edging. I'd like to pull those deluxe kickin' legs out even further. So this time I'm taking Angelic Red, not completely covering every edge highlight, just dropping little bits on the corners and crevices, certain edges, just making my way around town. Town is made of legs. Now up on the torso I'll be highlighting as well. Mainly I'll be using pale sand, but it's a bit abrupt when it drops down lower onto the body, so I'll mix a little bit of Daemonic Yellow in with my pale sand in those cases. Now it's time for a dip in Desolate Brown, but it was applied with a brush. I'm really enjoying this color from the Speedpaint range. It's a deep yellowy brown, so I just mixed it 3 parts Speedpaint medium to 1 part Desolate Brown. Covered the entire model, everything. I think I have forgotten to tell you that in the metal stage I gave all the gunmetal areas a wash of black, but this will go down on top of that as well, just giving everything that nice ochre tone. But once everything has been dropped down and washed and shaded, pull a slight highlight onto the metals. I'll be using the brightest silver I have, shining silver, and in some areas just dry brushing it to pull it out where it's broad enough, and some areas I'll have to paint some very tiny silver lines. Back to the airbrush. I hope you've bought one of these by now. Please invest in an airbrush. If you can afford Warhammer, you can afford an airbrush. I love using it, but I'm taking Molten Lava, as you can see, spraying up all the dust. These titans of industry are striding across these sun-bleached and dusty plains, ever stirring the contaminant clouds of sand as they march onward, crushing civilization beneath their boots. To weather it a little bit further, I'll take some diluted black and just drag some streaks here and there. If you remember in the previous video, I purposely created some flat spaces so I could put some kind of notable, meaningful weathering streaks in there. I'm also pulling the rust effects from the Fanatic range into play using dark rust and fresh rust. Just sparingly, just putting a small amount on, add a little bit of water, spread it around, maybe add a little bit more of your rust effect. You need to play with it, because the more you play with it, you get varied results, which is much more true to life in regards to rust. Thy speaketh of rust, but what do you know of dust? I'll be pulling some rust-colored weathering powder out to just further enhance that dusty look. I like the contrast of textures that this chalky powder brings into play compared to the acrylic paints, but you can see just concentrating on the base and them dirty ankles, all good. I should add that weathering powder is from Secret Weapon Miniatures, RIP. So the model is nearly completed now, but we still have this blank banner, and I've been thinking of what to put on that this whole time, and I'm in touch with some metal bands, and it got me to thinking this is a bit of a siege machine, so why don't I try to replicate one of the logos from the band Antichrist Siege Machine. We've got this crazy knife that is impossible to use and looks fucking awesome, so it's going on the banner. The banner is brought up with black and ice yellow to begin. The intention here is to give myself a warmer gray. You know, you can always tone things to have a certain level of temperature, And I think it matches to the kind of warm and rusty hues on everything else. But just wet blending that up real quick. Then just adding more ice yellow in with the black and just making an even brighter gray, I got to sketching. There is not a very easy answer here. I think the drawing is simple enough. I have a video, Intro to Freehand, check that out. But as always, just look at the object and try to break things down into basic shapes, draw out a kind of liney, skeletal representation of that object. And remember that you can work on both sides of the line. You're going to see some of my lines getting a little thinner, you know, as I'm going back in with that original black with just a slight amount of ice yellow mixed in to slowly sharpen and correct things. But it is a back and forth. So yeah, best advice I can give there is to work on both sides of the line. Don't get tunnel vision. You know, look at it closely, hold it back from far away, make sure everything is centered up nicely. Luckily, I have the banner pole itself. Like, okay, straight line down the middle of the knife should line up right with that banner pole. But you can use, you know, items, details around the model to kind of anchor your proportions. Also, this piece lacks dimension. So I'll go in and add even more ice yellow, probably just pure ice yellow, sharpening some of these lines. Again, this is very small, so I had to go back in there and correct things, work on both sides, etc. But yeah, just adding a little bit of dimension because I felt my, you know, very tiny drawing lacks a little bit of the kind of grit and subtlety that the actual logo has, so that really helped. Once that was dry and secure, I came in with my black and ice yellow mixture again and just lightly kind of blended a very thin filter in 2 layers over like the lower half of the banner. I always like to kind of go and glaze back over decals and freehands that will help to unify that livery. It'll unify the icon to the surface. You know, it makes it look a little more natural instead of just a sticker stuck upon. It looks too CGI if you don't blend it into the surface and the overall kind of bends and volumes of the object it's painted upon. And yes, no torso face is complete without his trusty rib gun. Painted that white to begin with. You probably saw it sitting there along through the video, but another final step, just taking some radiation glow, nice fluorescent orange, dropping a few layers of that into the gun hole. Gives me a nice nuclear glow of an about-to-fire weapon. I dig it. But there he is, torso face, spinning around, out in space, blasting the place. I'm done rhyming, but I love this model. I think I really hit on the particular style that I was aiming for. You know, I wanted this model to have a feeling. I wanted it to have that kind of grim, dark, little unreal, unwell feeling to it. And so I like the way that it came out in that way. Enjoy the little reference to a band. And the most fun part is, as I was painting this, I sent a picture to my friend from Eric's Hobby Workshop. We'll be traveling to Denmark soon, and we have a little bit of time to wait in the airport for the rest of the factory team to show up, so we're playing Flames of Orion at the airport. Fun. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it served to inspire you and inform a few questions that you may have had on your mind, how it all came together. I appreciate your support here on Patreon. As always, until we meet again, my friends, remain unchained.